And so with that, this is round 2 for this gentleman. He's come back to speak to our group. He knows the theme here. All of you are transportation, logistics, warehousing professionals, so that's the theme of this segment of the program. So with that, I know he's got a definite schedule, so let me get him up here quickly, because I know you're time constrained.
I don't want to sing alone, I'd like to do a duet. I want to really work, I asked the man to get up here and to share with us, and to share with me this time, because my work is at the federal level. And basically what we have at the federal level are 2 tracks. One track is federal policy that will direct the flow of money from the federal government to the issues you're interested in. The other is the grant programs that will enhance and enable a lot of what you want to do. The bottom line is it cannot be done without the state of California. And therefore I wanted just to do a duet here, if you don't mind singing with me. Whether it is a grant program or a program that is funded through what we call formula, most of the transportation infrastructure money flows to the state of California in a formula that unfortunately isn't as rich to California as it should be given our population and the size, but nonetheless does so. As we talk about transportation issues, as we talk about the opportunities and the necessities, I cannot do it by myself. Because the largest portion of money, I think it's more than 70%, is formula to the state. And then the state flows that money out based on law and the like here. The grant money fills in and augments what the state does not have in its program. I want to give an example. And we were just chatting up here a moment ago. We hit upon my high school chemistry class. The very first thing we did in high school chemistry after I had failed the safety exam, we took water and broke it into its 2 constituencies, hydrogen. We talked 30 years ago about the hydrogen highway. And we have in California, in West Sacramento, a consortium, the Hydrogen Consortium. It's been 40 years. The hydrogen highway is part of the federal program for transportation. And the electric highway is part of the federal program for transportation. California is ahead of the rest of the nation on the electrification side of it. I'm not so sure on the hydrogen side. But these programs are not the formula programs. But the formula, if we're going to have an electrification of the highway system and or the hydrogen highway, it cannot be done unless the state formula money fits tightly with it. So I wanted to bring you up here and put you on this.
Perfect.
Suffering already.
More suffering. A perfect setup for me, however. Let me first say, Congressman Garamendi, you weren't here when I made some comments about you earlier.
Don't repeat it. We won't tell them about those.
Don't tell them how bad I talked about him.
Thank you.
Look, a lot of the success that we're having in California, especially in the transportation space federally, is due to this man. And we're very thankful and grateful for your leadership. He serves on multiple committees, whether it be marine related or streets and highways related, T&I in general. He is the man. So again, give him a hand. Thank him for everything that he does. And when I I say success, before I get to the point that he's making, when I say success, IIJA, President Biden just celebrated 2 years of the bill 3 weeks ago. So far, we've received in California in formula money across the board, whether it be something related to broadband, transportation, just across the board, IIJA, almost $34 billion in 2 years. In 2 years. That's incredible. Let's just talk about it. And I mentioned already, this crowd already knows the money we just got for high-speed rail. $3.1 billion just a week and a half ago. Nevada got $3 billion. We share that because that train from Las Vegas is coming to the second largest city in America, Los Angeles. So it's a shared money. You can say we got $6 billion, even though it's 3.1. So we're doing well. Now, the congressman also made the point, and I'll get to his larger point after this. He also made the point that we could be batting better. I mean, we're batting pretty good. We're doing pretty good when we come up to the plate. But I made this point earlier as well. I don't know if you heard him reference it just now. And that is the federal government, the PIDP program. He knows this program, Port Infrastructure Development Program, is a $650 million grant program. We got 11% of that funding. I actually reached out to USDOT because I wasn't too excited when I saw the numbers. Out of $650 million annually, we got $75 million for 4 ports. Port of Hueneme, Humboldt, San Diego, and Long Beach. Those 4 ports got $75 million. Should we get more than that? Then 11% when we represent 40% of all imports and 30% of all exports for America? I would argue, and Governor Newsom just put $1.2 billion of general fund money, not gas tax, where we get our revenue, the taxpayers' general fund money into ports. So we're putting skin in the game. We have the volume that we have already in representing America and globally, and we're again on only 11%. So we got work to do together to change that 11%. I don't know if you had any comments on it, but I'll get to your larger
I was
point.
getting this message.
What's that?
I was getting the message here. Something about your congressional delegation not getting on the ball.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that. They know. Look, we all know that this time of the year, or this time in general, I need to be careful how I frame this, but you got to spread the peanut butter. Some people are nodding. They know what I'm saying.
You're good. I got that. I think we know.
You can't put the peanut butter and all in one place, even though that part of the bread is really what should be getting the peanut butter. You gotta, anyway, you guys, people are looking at me like I have 4 heads. They don't know what I'm saying. But Congressman knows what I'm talking about. So I think that plays a role here. But if you look at just the pure facts, what this governor is doing and what California, what you all in this room represent for the port industry, oh, there's no doubt we should be batting more than 11% of that money. But to your larger point, and whenever you allow me to run, I'll run. We're going to delay a little bit the next appointment. But a hydrogen highway and making sure that as we make our investments in the highway system, that it's aligned with that vision for how transportation is going to be charged in the future. Energy is going to be charged for it in the future. It's not, we're going to be making this transition. Everybody knows we're not just fossil fuels anymore. We saw what happened in Dubai, how the world came together in Dubai just a week ago, and the decisions they're making around fossil fuels. Largely more than 100 countries said transition. They're agreeing. So how do we make sure that our state dollars and federal dollars is aligning with that hydrogen and electric direction more and more? We're doing that. We could definitely be better. But I think that's kind of a little bit of the point that you're making.
Well, that is exactly the point. As you do your highway projects, or even the port programs, we must do that in a way that aligns with the future. The future is electrification. The future is non-carbon energy.
Non-fossil fuel.
And so how do we move that along? And that's where the federal government programs and the state programs need to align. Going forward, specifically for the ports, the port infrastructure that is on the port and then moving off the port, those programs have to be developed in a way that aligns with California's vision and hopefully the world's vision of non-fossil fuel. That requires applications for the grant money, the 11%, and if that's aligned with the highway vision, then we have a much better chance. There is another piece to this puzzle, and that is you spoke to the issue of the importance of California in all of this. Yeah, it's absolutely critical. But what you didn't talk about is the application of what we call environmental and economic justice. Communities left behind. It turns out that the port communities, because of the issues of contamination and are often communities that are economically depressed, marginalized, thank you, right word, and have significant environmental challenges to wit where we are at this moment. So if we look at those, the general thrust of many of the grants deal with this E and E, economic and environmental justice. And so we look at that along the way, and the vision of California to go to non-petroleum or non-fossil fuel sources of energy. We need to move these together, which is my message. And whether it's a port or Interstate 5, the other piece of this puzzle is that there's a very, very significant amount of research money available for this entire area. You can call it generally batteries or transportation. UC Davis and Berkeley and one other UC campus have a research program underway on trying to think through all of the challenges in this. So all of these pieces need to come together so that we can carry out the goal of climate change and economic development in the state. I don't know what your schedule is, but I know that I've got another, 20 minutes or so, and Q&A, you got to go.
I got to go back to Sacramento.
I heard you were gone some time ago, but I got here to find you. And I like singing with you.
Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the duet. He mostly sang. One quick question for both of us, or one of us, before we run. I need to get back to Sacramento. I know the Congressman's got a schedule.
This is a rare opportunity. You got a twofer here. So anybody got a question they would like to ask?
Either relating to the hydrogen highway, battery storage, how that relates to transportation and logistics, because we are going to be impacted.
Mr. Brown.
I'm not going to ask a question, but I do want to congratulate you both because, as a port, we are constantly getting communications from our colleagues on the East Coast about stealing cargo from the West Coast. And I remind them, with all...
Could you move about?
Out of the light.
Okay. There you go, perfect.
All right.
Now you're out of the glare.
So my message is this, and I tell them all the time, we're all going to be transitioning to this EV process. And there's no better place to start it than in California. Because if it's going to be done, we lead the charge on a lot of issues, and we have great leadership that's moving us in that direction. And they are going to get the benefit. The ports on the East Coast, the cities, the states on the East Coast, they're going to get the benefit of the experience that we go through with this whole transition process. So I tell them, if it's got to be done, California is the place where it needs to start, because we're going to get it done right, and you'll learn from us. So thank you both for your leadership. The whole country is going to benefit from the direction that you're positioning us in. That's my message.
Part of Oakland is a leader here, and as you develop your plans on the electrification on the port and then coming off the port, there is funding for those programs, and we've had that discussion back and forth. But that takes you to the highway. you've got that problem solved. But this is, I reached in my pocket, and I'm going to challenge you. That is the cheapest EV on the market. It's the Chevy Volt. Couldn't afford a Tesla, but the question is, where are the charging stations?
Yeah. Where's that?
I'm looking out there, I'm going,
I thought this was a duet, Congressman.
I need a charging station between here and my home. This is one of the challenges that we have, and that takes us to a different piece of money. And so what I'm driving here, hope to be able to drive, is that to solve these pieces of problem, there are multiple sources of money. In putting together the infrastructure plan and then the energy plan, which is called the Inflation Reduction Act, and then we call it the CHIPS Act, but the CHIPS Act is more than that. It's the biggest research program ever. So you put those things together, different pieces, and so our challenge and yours is to, how do we put these pieces together to achieve the goal? There's money for charging stations. There's money for grid to get to the charging station, electricity, and for the generation of it. All of these things come together. Getting back to something now.
Excuse me. You said it, I think you said it very well. I mean, you got CHIPS, you got IRA, you got IIJ. These are all federal opportunities. Under IIJ, there's something called NEVI, that we got nearly $400 million. Of course, California got more money than anybody else to do what you just described, which is mostly for the passenger vehicle side, not necessarily the freight side, but how do we implement that National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure? That's what NEVI stands for, NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. California got almost $400 million from IIJ for that. We're trying to implement, I actually asked about this in a staff meeting recently, like, where are we with implementing NEVI for California? Congressman said the route to his home in Walnut Grove is number one on the list. That is not true. I'm joking.
You missed his presentation this morning because he has a beef with PG&E.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah.
There are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and the state role here is absolutely critical. So for me, this has been a very, very special opportunity. And if you got to run, you got to run. But you and I are going to get together. We were talking to your teammate here about a long, long conversation about how we do this. The ports issue, I'm going to, before you run, there's so many things we need to talk about. The freight system, the use of electric batteries for long-haul freight, the use of hydrogen fuel cells for long-haul freight, those issues are out there. Both of them require infrastructure and research, but it is going to happen because California's set the law, and this is your point. California set the law, and the rest of the nation has no choice but to follow. There are efforts along the way to derail this, but it's not, it won't happen. We'll fight it along the way.
We have one question.
Well, no, it's not a question, but I'm just very happy to see both of you here in the same room and talking to you amongst yourselves in a frank way, and for opportunity for us to listen to the federal government, the most important guy in the transportation in Congress, and the most important guy in transportation in California. Talk about collaboration
It's true,
for
you
the
are.
benefit of California. Thank you very much.
With your forbearance, I'm going to take a few moments to transition to the international maritime picture here. It takes us back to the port. The many pieces to this, but what we're trying to do on the maritime policy is to essentially rebuild the American maritime industry. And then, probably 95% of the ships that come into Oakland are not American flag ships. The only ones that are American.
I was just going to mention, we do have some U.S. flag carriers here.
Well, the only ones that are U.S. flagged are the Jones Act fleet. These are ships that move from one California port to another California port. And that, if that were not in place, we would have very, very few. This is a national security issue of profound importance. If the major issues in international security are really found in two places, Russia, Ukraine, and the Pacific, China. A history of World War II will tell you that basically America's success in Europe and World War II was here, started right here. The ability of America to deliver to the troops the supplies they need. Today, we would have to hire a Chinese ship if there was an incident in Taiwan. Because we do not have the maritime capability. We've got air capability. That may be 10% of what would be needed. So we were looking at a strategy here, and that strategy is built upon the necessity of rebuilding the American maritime industry. And a lot of different pieces to that puzzle, but it is entirely possible, using the Jones Act, to create a national maritime security strategy in which the Jones Act ships are made, built, or modified to be militarily useful. And those of you that are in shipping building, you can think through what does that mean. And I won't go into all the pieces of it, nothing classified, but it's just kind of thoughtful. That comes back to California, because almost all of that will flow out of California. Right now, there is one place on the West Coast in which all munitions for the Navy, Air Force, Army, whomever, into the Pacific come out of Contra Costa County, MODCO, which is in the process of being updated, and there are some infrastructure issues for you in that also. But that is just an example of the importance of the maritime industry in California, to say nothing of what you talked about, and in your point about the economic side of it. And the efficiency of moving into the ports, and that's a dredging issue here in the Bay Area, a little less so in Southern California, but nonetheless a dredging issue. It's also the port, the infrastructure on the port, and to your point, how do you get from the port to where you want to go? And that is highways, to be sure. It's also trains. And increasingly, we may very well go back to something that was started 15 years ago, which was the offloading in Long Beach, putting it on a barge, bringing it to Sacramento or to Stockton or to Oakland. And so that is also a possibility as we look to how we move things here in California. The good news is that the farm workers were right. When they said si se puede, that's their chance. I just heard it in the streets at the Capitol yesterday. The farm workers were doing something and they were chanting si se puede. Yes, we can. And that ought to be all of our model. We can do this, we really do. And the good news is we got a state government that is all in. We got a federal government. You said 300 billion thus far?
Oh, no, almost 34 billion.
34 billion.
From IIJA, yeah. In 2 years.
IIJA has over $1 trillion for 5 years. Some of that 5 years will go on into the next 5, into 10 years. We're talking about $1 trillion of infrastructure money. And it's our task to get our hands on it.
I need to run. Great honor to share some time with the Congressman and to be with the deck. Thank you for all that you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, all right. right, so thank you once again for, he went way over his time, so thank you, Toks. We really, really appreciate it. And I know you have a tight schedule also.
I can do a few questions.
But some of these folks are a little, recalcitrant, so if anybody has anything they would like to ask the congressman, because I know his time is limited as well. David? All right, you're a soft talker.
There we go.
Yes, you spoke here in Richmond last August. We were talking about building the vessels to build the offshore wind, and the Jones Act plays a big part of that. So I have a multi-part question. Your act to close the loopholes for the Jones Act, I want to know what's the status on that. And I'm also curious about what can be done in the interim between the time it takes to revitalize the maritime industry here in California to the point when we can actually build vessels that can build offshore wind.
Excellent question. Having to do with the shipbuilding industry and the ship repair industry. Some of it is actually happening now, specifically Mare Island. A decade ago, I'm on the Coast Guard Maritime Subcommittee, and the issue of repairing the Polar Star, which is the heavy icebreaker that spends the Antarctic summer, which is our winter in Antarctic, and they're actually at Polar Stars. Comes back, has to be repaired. 6 months at sea, 6 months in the yard getting repaired from hitting ice. I said, where are you repairing it? I don't know. We take it back to Charleston, we take it back to the Gulf Coast. I said, why are you doing that? Why don't you do it on the West Coast? So it's now being repaired every summer in Mare Island. And so the Mare Island dry docks are now moving into repairing naval ships. The U.S. Navy has 2 submarine support ships. These keep the submarines at sea. They're off in the Pacific. One of them spent nearly 9 months at Mare Island being refurbished. It's now back into the Pacific. The one that's in the Pacific will soon come back to Mare Island to be refurbished and sent back out. So we're looking at the repair of ships. The U.S. Navy, I had Secretary DeToro out here a month ago touring Mare Island. His deputy came here and toured Richmond, looking at the potential of the pivot to the Pacific means the U.S. Navy's big time in the Pacific. The repair facilities are not available yet. So we're looking at rebuilding the repair facilities here, Mare Island underway, maybe Richmond, not sure. So that's all part of it. The other part of it is on the commercial side of it. We've got several there. I'll do this quickly. Not only a very, very small part of the oil and gas that is exported from the United States is on American-built ships. An example here is Chevron's ships. But that's like maybe 2%. You take all of the oil company ships, you take maybe 2%. If 5 to 10% of that was on American-built ships, American sailors, American flagged, we would build 40 ships in the next 10 to 15 years. Oilers and LNG ships. Good for the ships, good for the mariners, but the shipyards themselves, we would be rebuilding our shipyards and updating them, efficiency and so forth, so that they can build those ships. You mentioned the offshore wind. Likely to happen, probably in the 90% range. The state is into it, state laws setting it up. Where will the ships be built? We have a huge fight. I'm winning this one on the East Coast. I said, 4 words went into the Outer Continental Shelf law, and that is the Outer Continental Shelf is for all forms of energy. The previous law said for oil and gas. The put 4 words in the Outer Continental Shelf Act 3 years ago, all forms of energy, meaning the Outer Continental Shelf is for wind, wave, and oil and gas. Changed everything. The energy, the big wind turbine companies are all European. They're Chinese, but the Chinese are not in this game. The Europeans want it 100%. No, you're not looking at the law. The law says it is a Jones Act operation. Not yet totally successful, we're pushing it. 3 heavy lift erection vessels are being built to erect the towers for the East Coast. These towers are 700, 800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet tall. Okay, that's 3. One's built, another one under construction, the third one is waiting to see what happens with the permitting on the East Coast. What about the West Coast? Here's an opportunity. Will those be built here? The smaller support vessels, yes. If you've paid attention to the kind of wind industry that will be off the California coast, it's different. It's a long way to the bottom. So these towers will not be stuck on the bottom, they'll be floating. What is the float? You know, I'm envisioning, I don't know, we're going to have a balloon. It's going to be steel.
We have 2 companies here in the East Bay that are going to be, that will have designed those floating platforms for the turbines, right here in the East Bay, 2.
And where will the steel be formed?
I invited our friends from U.S. POSCO, or U.S. to this event. They didn't come.
All that
If
stuff
you-
is in your district.
That's correct. I have the largest industrial district on the West Coast.
Both sides of the Carquinez.
Both sides of the Carquinez Straits, and from, well, here to past Antioch. It's fabulous. And all of this is
I'm going
possible.
to be a provocateur on behalf of some of the folks who are a little quiet right now. So what I hear about U.S. shipbuilding, U.S. ship repair here stateside, specifically the Northern California, California in general, is that cost differential, of course, between China and us. Is there any way to offset by the federal government? I know subsidy is a bad word, but
We subsidize everything. The meal you had today was subsidized. That food's subsidized.
thanks to that guy. But
And I didn't mean his generosity. I mean the farmers subsidized.
so that is the issue for the carriers who want to, through the Jones Act, have to build their ships here stateside. But our shipbuilding capacity is very limited because we just don't have the volume, the economies of scale, whether it's through the military, the Coast Guard, the U.S. carriers, U.S. flag carriers who cater to the Jones Act. How do we help offset the costs of shipbuilding and ship repair here stateside?
Excellent question, and therein lies the political challenge. First of all, recognize that the China shipbuilding and Korea shipbuilding and Japanese are approaching similar costs to the United States. How are they able to build so many ships? Heavily subsidized, very, very heavily subsidized, every one of them. In all 3 of those countries, and what's left of the European shipbuilding industry exactly the same. So what we are doing is 2 things. One, for the Jones Act ships, and these apply to the big ones. I don't know if we have American lines here. There's an opportunity that exists for the American ship builders to take their profits and put them into a fund for the next ship, tax without being taxed. That has been longstanding. I have legislation that would expand that and make it far more robust so that the carriers, the owners of all the different kinds of ships, whether it's a small or a big one or everything in between, can take before tax money, put it into a fund tax-free for the next ship. It's an old program. It's going to be it's going to be much bigger. That's a subsidization using the tax code. For the shipyards themselves, we obtained a $10 million grant for the small shipyard upgrade program. That went into Mare Island, and they are seeking a second grant to open the third dry dock at Mare Island. When that dry dock opens, they will be bringing in additional naval ships, and now they're bringing in commercial ships. That dry dock will bring somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 jobs to Mare Island, assuming that they're constantly busy, and they've been able to do that. That small dry dock, small shipyard repair money or upgrade money is available for all of the ports in this area. If you've been following the steel industry, a company called Cleveland Cliffs, which is a steel company out of the Midwest, an integrated steel company, or from the Minnesota all the way down, using hydrogen and electricity rather than coal, except in the production of certain kinds of steel where they need coke, is acquiring U.S. steel. What does that mean to Pittsburgh, the steel mill in Pittsburgh? Let me just say, I've had multiple discussions with the company, and it is in my district. And I'm looking at it this way. You're talking about the floating devices, floats. Somebody's got to come up with a good name for this. Okay, we got a steel mill. We have ports that can be used to form, weld, put together the floats, the tower. Can this be done in Morro Bay? No. Can it be done in Eureka? Pretty difficult. Can it be done here? Oh yeah. Oh yes. And the steel can be formed here in Pittsburgh, California. And I'm going, why not? Why not do this? The state of California, those of you that operate the state, has the power to make it happen. No secrets here. For this, there is no way that the wind turbines in Morro Bay or Eureka will be built without a permit from the State Lands Commission. 3 miles out, unless they figured out a way to use carrier pitches to get that energy across that 3-mile gap, those cables are going to be approved by the State Lands Commission. I've been there, done that. There's some interesting history about the work I did when I was Lieutenant Governor on the State Lands Commission about permitting. The state can simply say, it's going to be made in America. They can't say it's going to be made in California, but they say it's going to be made in America. It's going to be a project labor agreement. And if you want this permit, you might consider San Francisco Bay ports as being a place in which you will form up these floats and towers. And we have a new industry being developed right here. It's called the biomanufacturing industry, using biology to create the fibers and the material that is used to form the 250 or 500 foot blades on these wind turbines. It's happening within 5 miles of where we are at this moment. Could that be done here also? Oh yes. Oh yes, it could. So there's a grand strategy in which we use an extraordinary asset that really doesn't exist anywhere else on the West Coast. And that asset comes in three different ways. One, the new industries, the research, and the new startups that can make these materials of the future. I just met with the firefighters, and they said, we understand that there's a substitute for the PFAS that we use in our equipment, and every day we are absorbing this chemical, and we're dying of cancer. Well, there's a new chemical that's coming right out of the biotech industry here that does all that PFAS does, permeability, waterproofing, and the like, and firefighting. That doesn't have the problem that the PFAS has. That's one thing. We're creating tomorrow right here. Secondly, we have yesterday here, and it is nowhere else. Nowhere else on the West Coast are the port facilities available today that this San Francisco Bay has. So we repurposed them for tomorrow. And the third thing we have, which is again unique to my district, the 8th Congressional District, where I have all 5 oil refineries, is the most sophisticated, capable workforce in the region, if not in America. The union members at the refineries have the skill sets for all of this. The welders, the pipe fitters, the steam fitters, the electricians. Nowhere else do the skill sets exist as they exist here. And every one of those skill sets is necessary to build a ship, big or large, or to engage in the biotech industry, or to form up steel towers. We can do it. We can do it. What did I say? Si se puede. I got to run. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you for putting this together.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Please, once again, thank the Congressman for coming and joining us, joining Toks for a federal state meeting tonight.